So I want to make a brief video about variable line weight when you're working with Adobe Illustrator. So normally when you work with Illustrator, the lines are monoweight. So if I were to zoom in here, and we'll try and zoom in a little tight to see, you see the stroke. The stroke is a theoretical line, impossibly thin. And then we measure weight of the stroke in each direction. So if I have a 3-point line here that you can see, it's 1.5 point on this side of the line and 1.5 point on this side of the line. But the point is, it's monoweight. It's very consistent. And if we look at how the weight, actually how it's drawn, this one is just drawn simply. It's got pen tool that created a path. There should be no fill in that one, so I'll get rid of the fill to kind of demonstrate that. This one has a fill here for the eye. This has a fill, and then we have a big yellow circle with a black stroke. So it's very, very simple to draw, but that artwork really lacks any kind of line weight variation. Now, if I zoom into the bottom example, you can kind of see here a little bit more of that line weight variation going on. Now, it's a very fast hand-drawn one, so I didn't do the greatest job, but I want to point something out to you. If we look at this, whereas the line weight is consistent, it's equal all the way around, many styles of artwork, including that which is done by Walt Disney and that which is done by Looney Tunes and several other, sort of popular Illustrator and animation type houses, you'll see that there's variated line weight. So the brush stroke seems to go thin here, then it gets thicker. Probably the artist pressed down on the pen of the brush when they were drawing this by hand, and then they push down real hard, and then they start to let up off of the brush as they get to the terminal point. Same thing with the eyes. You want to give some variation to the eyes here. You'll see there's parts where it's thinner and parts where it's thicker. And the same thing with the mouth. We've got parts where it's very thin, then it gets thicker, then it gets thin again. So that's a very, very common stylistic decision made by illustrators. And the way we imitate that, and it's the easiest way, is really by layering shapes. We call this the cut paper method sometimes. And the way that works, I don't know if you remember when you're a little kid and you cut something out of construction paper and you layer the construction paper on top of each other to make an image, maybe a Valentine or something of that sort, a Halloween card. You cut out a big black shape, then you might put an orange shape of a pumpkin on top of that, and that's how you create it using sort of cut construction paper. Well, in order to get, and this is the easiest way, there are certainly other ways to do this. With Illustrator CC, there's new tools that you can draw with if you're doing it from scratch. But if I'm working with a licensed line art character, the easiest way for me to do this a lot of times is to draw separate shapes. Now I'm going to take this apart or deconstruct this to show you those separate shapes. In order to get the illusion of line weight, a black line weight, what we've actually done is we've moved a yellow shape that's slightly different sizing on top of the black shape. Okay, so that's how we get this illusion of line weight. And if we go over here to the eye, again, I'll move the eye out here, and we'll see that there's a yellow shape that gets put on top of this black shape, that gets put on top of the yellow face shape, that gets put on top of the black face shape. So there's now a stacking order, even if you only work on one layer, inherent here to make the illusion of this line weight. We go to the mouth, we'll see the same thing. Move this part of the mouth out here, this part of the mouth out here. You'll see, okay, this is how we sort of get the illusion of that thick, thin line weight. Okay, much like Disney. So when you are working with things that have thick, thin line weight transitions, the easiest way to do that is to draw these shapes and then to layer it. There are other ways to do it. You'll see people saying their way is easier. I'm not here to engage in a debate about which method is easiest. I just want to show you one of the more popular ways to do this. Let's take a look at some variable line weight stuff. So as promised, Disney and Looney Tunes are very, very big. If you look carefully at the artwork, you'll see that the line goes from thick to thin. And that's the type of pens, originally brushes, that they dipped in ink to kind of create this line weight. The artist would actually press down more where it's thick and then let up pressure on the brush where it goes thinner. And you can see that thick and thin quality to the artwork here. You'll notice that the lines are not mono weight. They're not all the same weight. So we can't draw it the way that we would draw perhaps certain other things inside of Illustrator. Now I'm going to show you, just to compare and contrast, one that actually is mono weight. So this is somebody's Behance portfolio, and you can see really, just some lovely work here. But if you look at all the line work in here, all the line is equally consistent. Even if there's variation amongst the objects, in other words, the line weight from this point to this point is consistent. So they set aside maybe a 1-point stroke or a 2-point stroke, and they click with the pen tool to draw that. They're good. Same thing if we go inside here. Maybe this is 1 point. They click with the 1-point weight, and they draw these shapes, kind of like when we did the sine wave a little bit. And you have very consistent, very even line weight. Each type of artwork has its place when we're drawing things and we want to be true to the intent of the original creator. So in this case, for my example, let's say Disney or Looney Tunes. You want to draw with that variegated line weight or that variable line weight. You want to do what we showed with the smiley face. Hopefully that makes sense to you. We're going to explore in our class some more drawing using that cut paper method.